Hello and welcome to the teaching podcast of Epic Church in Independence, Missouri. Thanks for joining us today. Today's 10-minute interview is with lead pastor Bobby Hawk, and it's part one of our Ministry Values series at Epic Church. Listen in to the Epic Teaching Podcast today as we continue the Epic Conversation. Today we're beginning to start to talk about our ministry values, the ministry values of Epic Church. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the first one here today. It is, we are willing to do anything short of sin to reach people. Bobby, we have that statement there. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that statement in and of itself, Dustin, might be a little controversial, but I think we have to remember that values are the thing that drive our organization, and our organization happens to be a church. And I think what drove Jesus all throughout the Gospels is fairly easy to notice, that his sole purpose was to reach people. And the church, our mission is to reach people. It's to go into all the world and make disciples. And so when we say, number one, our first value is we're willing to do anything short of sin to reach people, what we really mean by that is that we don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that our methodology is on the same level as Scripture. If you remember when Jesus came, the Pharisees and the religious people at the time didn't like his methodology or even his interpretation of Scripture from the Old Testament, because they had created laws and legalism, and we want to steer away from that. So we kind of have an open and a closed hand mentality, that what is closed off, what we won't change, what we won't compromise, is Scripture. But anything not listed in Scripture is open. It's open to change, because obviously as culture changes, we have to adapt to culture. So yeah, it's probably a little controversial to say we'll do anything short of sin to reach people, but we mean it at Epic Church. We're willing to try it, to do anything that doesn't contradict Scripture to see people come to know God.
This next value, number 2, says this: we exist more for the people outside of the church than the people inside of the church. And those listening may hear that and say, well, that doesn't really make sense. But in all actuality, it makes perfect sense. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because it's real easy for any of us, myself included, to start to expect the church to do more for me as a Christian. You almost become a club member.
Yeah,
it can be real easy I show up with my membership card, I pay my membership dues, I commit my membership time, and now the church is there for me. It's the club that I attend. The reality is that's definitely not the picture of a church from the New Testament. The church is really one of the only organizations in the world that exists more for the people outside of it than the people inside of it. And so we say that in the sense of it's not that we don't want to care for the people within our church. We obviously do. But there's always a focus that our church is a hospital for hurting people. And we want to continue to reach out to people that don't know God, and that's going to be our driving force, which means we're going to ask the people at Epic Church to commit to that, more so even than a commitment to a country club type of membership.
And ministry value number 3, not to just continue along, but it really helps us define number 2 a little bit. And it says, we are a church for anyone, but not for everyone. Another one of your controversial statements there, Bobby. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, and it's true. We're a church for anyone, but not for everyone. Anyone's welcome to attend, but not everyone's gonna feel like they fit at Epic Church. I think it's just real honest up front, Dustin, to know that not everyone that walks through the door of Epic Church is gonna feel a connection. They're not all gonna stay. They're not all gonna connect to the vision, and we're okay with that. And that's why we say anyone's welcome to attend. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter your background. Doesn't matter your past. You're welcome to come to Epic Church. And if you feel a connection to who we are and what we're doing, you're welcome to stay. But if not, we want you to know, some people say that close the back door. We say, no, we're going to light up the exit sign. We're going to make sure that you know that if this isn't the right place for you, that number one, if it's not the right place, we don't want you to stay.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be disgruntled, get upset, cause division. More importantly, we do want you to find the right place and find the place where you can best serve God in the capacity that He's called you to. And we believe in that so much, Dustin. I know that you know this is true from experience that we've had here, but we like those open conversations.
Yeah.
And we will help people find another place that maybe does fit their style just a little bit more if Epic is not the church for them.
We know that so many churches, once someone is in their church, they want to shut the door on them and they don't want to let them out. When many times it is better for that person to just leave and move on and find a place that is better fitting to them.
Absolutely.
Number 4 there is really an awesome statement. We will never be too big or too small. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a statement that obviously seems paradoxical at first, but we won't. As a church, we won't be too big. We could never be big enough. As long as there's people in our community that are far from God, that don't have a relationship with Him, there always has to be room for one more. And you hear that a lot around our church. There's always room for one more. But the reality is we will also never be too small. And too small means in the way that we want to provide care for one another. So we intentionally try to create venues, avenues, if you will, for relationships to take place, whether it's in life groups, whether it's in our ministry teams, to where if you are going through a season in life, a difficult time, if you're in the hospital, if a family member is ill or even passes away, we're here for you because we want you to know that you are an integral part of Epic Church. But at the same time, there's always room for one more.
Definitely. And, so many churches, they want to set a limit. We're going to be this size or we're going to be this size that's a little bit bigger. But we really, our goal is to reach people. And so
that's it.
The numbers are literally unlimited.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5 there, this one is another puzzling one. It says we are going to say no more than we say yes. Oh, no. What does that really mean?
Yeah, well, and what it means is this, that we have a very clearly defined vision as a leadership team. That doesn't make us right. There's not a right way, per se, to do ministry. But for us, there's a right way because it's what God's called us to do. And so oftentimes we have to say no to certain ministry ideas or certain mission endeavors, if you will, in order to really stay focused on the yes that God's called us to do. So we feel like we're very releasing in many ways, but when it comes to people trying to get Epic Church to commit time or resources and even energy, we have to really know that fits and helps us fulfill our vision. And it doesn't mean that those things are bad things. It doesn't make those things wrong. Yeah. It just means that in order for us to be the most effective with what God's called us to do, oftentimes that 2-letter word is the most difficult word for us to say, but we have to say no in order to fulfill the greater yes that God's called us to do.
Bobby, we've talked about those first 5 ministry values. Take a second here and give us a kind of a conclusion statement to those first 5.
Well, I think the conclusion statement is simply this. The values are meant to be direct. They're meant to be defining who we are. And I would hate it if somebody listening to this maybe took these values or these comments out of context. It's not the purpose. The purpose is not try to run people away from Epic Church. However, we want people to know up front that we do value things, and the things we value we're passionate about, and that's what we desire to live out as a church. And so these are just the first 5 of a set of 10 values that really shape and define not only who we are, but who we desire to be. And I think that's a good place to be. It's a good place to know who we are and what we value, because it helps us fulfill the mission and the vision that God's called us to at Epic Church.
Definitely. Bobby, thanks again for joining us, and thank you for listening into this teaching podcast. And we'll conclude the ministry values in our next segment as we continue on. Thanks for listening in to the teaching podcast of Epic Church. For the latest updates on Epic, visit www.epickc.com.